Hello, welcome in everyone back here to the Batcat Beat. A little bit of a break to kind of let everything kind of play out a little bit. I'm Daniel Hager, the Kentucky baseball beat writer for KSR, joined by my good friend Jonathan Bruin, the Kentucky baseball beat writer for the Kentucky Colonel. We've had about 2 weeks now, a week and a half now to kind of just sit back and take a break from everything and let everything cycle in. Jonathan, how have you been, man?
Been good. I mean, it's been kind of a breath of fresh air to not be, at the ballpark every single weekend like we have been for the last little bit here. But it's been great so far. Hope everyone's summer's going well. Hope your summer's going well, Dan.
Yeah, I'm already kind of starting to miss it. Like I'll drive
Yeah.
past it every day, and I'm like, man, it's like that's 4 times a week that I'm used to going. But what a season it was. We haven't gone back on here since it ended. I believe the last show we did was with before the Florida game with our good friend Nick De La Torre, who joined us, and man, he laid it out like everything that he said like was played out to perfection. Their pitching, their offense, and me and Steven were sitting in our hotel room after we talked to him. We were like, man, like they seemed confident, and they were really confident. And UK loses to Florida. That's what ends their run in the College World Series. But man, it just what a season it was in Lexington, the best, obviously, in program history. And then we were lucky enough to get to go to Omaha and just John, how much fun was that being there?
Yeah, I mean, it was special. It was a dream come true, really. I mean, just as a baseball fan, not even a Kentucky fan, just as a baseball fan in general, it was just amazing to be a part of that atmosphere. I got to go down into the crowd and watch a game. I think you all did as well, and just to be a part of that atmosphere, which is kind of nothing like no fanship and all. I think I watched the very first game, that Carolina and Virginia game, and it was just an insane atmosphere. And then everything all around, all the sites and everything all around, like the fan fest or, this or that, the kind of like little shops they had and stuff. It was just an awesome baseball atmosphere. And I mean, if any baseball fan ever gets a chance, never decline a chance to go experience this, whether you're a fan of any of the teams there or not. It's truly just incredible experience.
Yeah, and we got to see what is probably the greatest play and moment in Kentucky baseball history, the Mitch Daly walk-off home run, which is kind of going to live forever in not even UK baseball terms, but in all-time UK sporting moments. I know me and Steve were talking about that on one of the rapid reaction. It's like you sit there and try and think, like, even in the sports, in all sports, baseball, basketball, football, the only things that can kind of compete with a walk-off home run or like a buzzer beater or like a Stephon Diggs like Hail Mary touchdown. And man, it's like UK hasn't had many of those on that stage.
Yeah.
It was special, but just the season in general was just so awesome. I know me and you were there literally. I missed 2 games. I think you might have been there every single game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, and just seeing the progression of the crowd and the fan support. I know even me last year before you came along last season, man, like this was fresh off of UK missing the tournament, and they had that nice little run in the SEC tournament, but they come back and we're still like unsure about UK like taking baseball seriously. And you get bring in guys like Jackson Gray and Hunter Gillum, and you got guys on the bump like Zach Lee and Darren Williams who really start turning this thing around. And even last year, you could see just the progression of things happening and the crowds getting bigger. And it led to the regional where they beat Indiana, and that was one of the biggest crowds. And then this year, the top 4 biggest crowds in Kentucky baseball history were set this season. The 2 games against Oregon State and the 2 games against Tennessee. And you see the videos of the team returning after losing in Omaha to all the fans here. And people are so much more excited. Like, it's crazy the contrast between last offseason and this offseason, just how much stuff is happening and how much people are caring about it. It really is awesome to see everyone buy into the program.
Yeah, I mean, it's insanely special because it's been like just kind of one of those things where like you never really thought people would really care like this about Kentucky baseball, especially. And so just kind of seeing that progression, like you said, it's just been really crazy to watch. Like it's just like you don't even really know where it came from, but if you really kind of look under the hood, you can see how gradually this has been happening, and now it's finally here, and it'll probably be an expectation to remain here, on a competing level. But I mean, yeah, just being a part of just this team alone and just going from the games where you maybe can, maybe looks like there's maybe 100 people there. If you take out like family and friends of the players, you might have single digit fans there at the beginning of the season when it's freezing cold and rainy on what I think they had like a 1 o'clock on a Tuesday at 4 o'clock or something. So, I mean, just seeing that, and then the final game against Oregon State, and then even the faithful in Omaha and stuff. I mean, it's just crazy. And then, just like you said, this offseason, seeing how involved people are in the conversation of moves being made, stuff like that. People are eager to see what happens next with this team. And I think it's just kind of a long build finally paying off. And I think it's going to stay.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on the expectation, because that's what me and Steven were kind of hammering home that point. It's like once you reach a part of a sport, it's like you're expected to get back there. Like Kentucky basketball, you're expected to make the Final Four because you're used to making those. UK football, the expectation now, as of now, is still like 10-3 in a bowl game, because that's the best that we've ever had. But with Kentucky baseball, there really wasn't ever like an expectation. It's go out there, let's have some fun, win some SEC games, maybe make a slight run in the SEC tournament. If they make the NCAA tournament, it's cool. Win a regional, maybe. Like last season when they won the regional, it was like their Super Bowl win. Like they went out there and they dogpiled. But you saw how quickly that turned this season when they win that regional over Western Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana State. There was no dogpile because you're expected to be there. You go to the Super Regional. I mean, they've never won a Super Regional, and they win that. And now they go to the College World Series, and it's like, this is what you expect every single season now. This is what schools like LSU and all these other traditional college baseball powerhouses, Florida's and teams of that nature. And now we're at the point where next season fans are going to be like, man, maybe we need to book some hotels in Omaha just in case we get to that point. And so is that, do you agree with me that that's kind of now the expectation for what they should build towards?
Yeah, I mean, I think it should certainly be considered that. I mean, maybe not Omaha every single year just because that's just so hard to do. But I mean, I feel like, losing in a regional is now almost unacceptable.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you've seen the gradual progression of this team go from all the way down here to all the way up to the biggest stage in college baseball. So, I mean, now it's becoming, being in a super regional, being right there in the mix, maybe a game or swing away from going to Omaha needs to kind of become the expectation. The only thing that's going to make that difficult, in my opinion, is so much roster turnover every single year. Because this year was the perfect storm of transfers. They all hit. I mean, pretty much every single transfer hit and played a massive role.
Yeah.
Is that going to happen every single year? No, it's not. Now, should there ever be a year where they're all misses? Also, no. So, I mean, I think this staff has gotten to a point where, like, now it isn't the expectation to be right there in the mix for a regular season SEC title. I mean, they haven't really performed in the SEC tournament, so it's hard to have strong expectations there. But as far as NCAA tournament, should be a no question. Hosting a regional should now be, really the expectation as well. And then everything after that is where maybe you might need to see it a few more times for it to be like, okay, this team needs to be in Omaha every single season. But I mean, I definitely think that the expectations should continue to rise, and I think it's completely justified if they do.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how just consistent they've been these last two seasons in terms of hits and misses. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Like if you were to think about maybe transfers this year, the only one I would maybe give you as a miss was Dominic Nyman. But how good was that guy at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I mean, that's hard to give him a miss just because, like you said, I mean, he was absolutely lights out for like that first, and then had the CG against Alabama. Like, I mean, yeah, it didn't end pretty, but it started, I mean, just absolutely lights out. So, but yeah, that's maybe the only one where you could be like, hear me out, and then okay.
Yeah, but such a fun season, but eventually had to come to an end. Came to an end at the hands of Florida, who went on to lose to Texas A&M. Texas A&M and Tennessee came out on top in 3 games. Just kind of hate to see that, but congrats, respect where respect is due. I think they were the best team all season long. Like I know UK and them were at the 4 and the 5 at one point, and I think that's when Tennessee beat UK and they jumped them, and I was like, yeah, like I truly thought. And then Arkansas was there at some point this year, and I was never high on them at all. And we saw what happened to them. So, man, just an awesome season getting in there with the fans and the moments. But comes to an end, and people start hitting the portal now. It's the off season. It kind of sucks, but it makes things a lot more interesting in the offseason instead of just the high school recruits and the prospects. You've now got constant stream of big names and some guys entering the portal. Just look what happened with Texas A&M, Jason Violet, Hayden Schott, some big names entering, but then they hired, I believe it was one of their assistant coaches. They bring them back. But UK has had 12 players enter the portal, which I believe they had 3 last year. So it just kind of shows what happens on a team when you win. Like the roster spots kind of condense, so not as much playing time, not as many opportunities, and we've seen that with guys who didn't play this year, kind of leaving. But there have been 2 surprises, which we'll touch on. But UK has gotten 12 players from the portal, which we'll touch on there also. But one of the biggest news stories broke I believe it was on Monday, that assistant coach Nick Amorati departed for the Georgia job. Man, like, it's kind of a brutal blow. We've seen Coach Mingione just rave about him all year long and for years now. And I know when they beat Oregon State, Minge kind of broke down talking about like what well, just that he was called to move Ammo from third base to the dugout and for Minge to go coach third base, and just how good Ammo's been with these guys. And then just me, like, talking to the transfers that are coming in now. I've talked to Oliver Boone so far and Ethan Walker, and Ammo was the lead recruiter for both of those guys. And so now he goes to Georgia, and then, someone is going to follow him. So just kind of how big of a blow did you think that really was?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it can be understated. I mean, you just hear about how highly not only Minge, but you talk to some of the players as well. I mean, I remember Grant in one of the pressers, one of like just the weekly pressers, talked about how, he has the utmost faith in all the staff and Ammo when he goes to call these timeouts and make these calls and all this stuff. So it was just a little bit of confusion, a little bit of just kind of like, why? Like, you get it if it was maybe something personal, maybe just that's just what he wanted to do. And if that's the case, cool. But if, it would be a really bad look to me if it came out that it had anything to do with money.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when you have a staff like this, I mean, you look from top to bottom, this coaching staff was just loaded. So especially after seeing the turnaround that Amorati's been a part of, it should have been obvious that schools are going to come after all your coaches, every one of them, probably even Minge. Obviously, It'd probably be a really quick phone call. I mean, we think. I mean, you never know. But, I mean, just it would be so obvious to just be, if you were that oblivious to schools coming after your coaches and it came down to money, that would be a really bad look to me, because you got a real chance to keep building something special here. And he was just such a huge part of it. So, it's going to be interesting to see, just like those guys, the guys you talked to said, he was the lead guy. He's one of the reasons why I'm here. So it'll be interesting to see if kind of Cousineau and Minge can kind of play some damage control and keep these guys here, or if we're going to see even more turnover like we saw yesterday with McCarthy heading out.
Yeah, I will say both guys I've talked to, I touched on their status. They're both 100% committed to Kentucky, so nothing to worry about right now. But I think it goes into more of an opportunity thing, because just think, this guy, Coach Ammo, came to UK from Southern Miss as kind of a volunteer assistant in 2021. And now, just 4 years later, it'll be 4 years next year, he's the second leading assistant on Georgia. Like, him and Will Coggin will be the number 1 and number 2 in Athens. So, I mean, really a great opportunity for him. It's not like he left or anything, broke his contract. His contract did expire at midnight on the 30th, and then it breaks at 1 o'clock the next day, that he is indeed heading to Athens. So it sucks for UK as a program. Ammo is a great guy, and obviously, I mean, every single player that would come up there raved about him. And a guy that I always noted raved a lot about him, Nolan McCarthy. And so maybe too early to call Nolan McCarthy to Georgia, which, love that guy. Best of luck to that guy. Just think of the moments that he gave UK. He had the home run robbery against Arkansas in that SEC tournament game, and then obviously the slide against Oregon State. So absolutely no harsh feelings, but man, losing Ammo does stink a little bit. But speaking of McCarthy, I wanted to get into the portal gains and some portal losses real quick, kind of talk about those. So first, I was going to go over some gains. This is what they have right now. As of right now, they've got 12 guys committed to transfer to Kentucky next year. EKU junior right-handed pitcher Chase Alderman, Oliver Boone from Cal, Cole Haig from Columbia, a designated hitter, Cole Henschel from Richmond, Luke Lawrence, infielder from Illinois State. And then you've got Nick McKay, Jackson Strong, and Ryan Verdugo. I believe it's more of a Strong and Verdugo guys that, man, we can't really nail down yet because they are projected to go in the upcoming MLB draft, which is on the 14th, I believe. So those would be really great gets if we can get those guys to Lexington. But I know last season UK had a guy committed. Man, I can't think of his name, but he's a first baseman, and he got drafted in it was like the 17th round. Might have been later than that, and he decided to head to the minors. So it would be awesome if UK can get Strong and Verdugo in there. Strong from Canisius and Verdugo from Cal State Bakersfield. Strong's numbers were awesome. He hit for a 350 batting average. His stolen bases aren't up there, but I believe they were in the 30s or 40s. Dude is really good on the base paths. And then Verdugo, 2.72 ERA and almost 90 innings pitched, 93 strikeouts. So not the worst incoming transfers. I definitely think it could be better. Maybe the news of Amorati leaving kind of leaked out, and that's maybe why they've only gotten one splash from a Power 5 school, or maybe two, I guess, from Boone and Pelletier. That is something that we need to touch on later because you got Pelletier from Kansas State, and then our guy, our freshman class of 2024 catcher who recently just decommitted from Texas, Ryan Schwartz. So interested to see what they do at that position, Jonathan.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of looking at those gains, it's going to be interesting to see how they keep it going. But I mean, they have obviously lost some guys too, so I just need to hop into those. I mean, just kind of looking, you kind of see some familiar names of some guys who got some playing time this year. But I mean, outside of McCarthy, Lafferty as well played a lot. But I mean, when you look at impact players, of course, the biggest loss is McCarthy. I mean, obviously, probably heading to Georgia. I mean, don't want to assume, but it's a pretty good idea maybe of what's going on down there. But just his impact is going to be big. Just kind of one of those guys you've seen who, his numbers like on paper were not great, but you always knew he was better than the numbers, and you always seen kind of how it was just continuing to rise with him through SEC play. As he stayed fairly consistent, it was really just a slow start that really kind of bottomed out his numbers, so to speak. So he's obviously the biggest loss, but just kind of looking at some of these other guys like Applegate, Higdon, Frieda, Hayes. I mean, none of these guys played like super prominent roles. A lot of like Frieda and Hayes were kind of mop-up duty in a lot of games where it was not super competitive. So, losing Lafferty, he was the midweek guy this year, however, if we all remember, wasn't really supposed to be. It was supposed to be Ben Cleaver, but because of injuries, he stepped into that role, started really strong, and then really hit a wall there towards the end. And then obviously didn't really get a chance to redeem himself with those like last 4 to 5 midweek games just not happening. I think one of the most slept on losses is Austin Foley. I mean, I know they brought in a bunch of other catchers, but in his limited playing time, he looked pretty good. I mean, so maybe I think that might be more of an underrated loss than kind of what's being stated. But obviously, looking at McCarthy, he is definitely McCarthy and then Travis Smith as well. They both played pretty big roles this year. Travis obviously had his fair share of injuries, but showed some promise out of the bullpen after being moved from that Friday night role. But just kind of looking at the names, those are definitely the biggest guys is McCarthy and Travis out of the guys that Kentucky has lost. I don't think they'll have a big issue replacing a bunch of these guys. As we kind of noted, a lot of them were kind of mop-up duty pitchers or just guys that didn't really play in general. But I mean, it's kind of odd that there's only 2 hitters left who are in the lineup every single day. That's kind of hard to believe. Like, you knew there would be heavy turnover, but I'm not sure anyone thought it would be quite this much with just a lot of different players moving. And I mean, I think it's fair. I mean, I think a lot of these guys didn't play here. So, if they're going to be continue to move on from, they're going to continue to just replenish the talent pool. They're not going to make these changes in-house. It's smart on these guys to hop in the portal and try to find a better opportunity for themselves.
Yeah, and that's why for sure I think that Minge and Cousineau are really going to kick things into overdrive now to kind of fill those roles out of the portal. A guy you didn't even mention who I would have loved to see back is Lucas Schramm. That dude is huge, and he's hits for power. Dude is really impressive. I would have liked to seen him back, but obviously Nolan McCarthy is the big loss, and Travis Smith as well. But I know you remember like the last month and a half of the season, we all kind of expected him not to be back next season, whether it be the MLB draft, which he was projected. I mean, he's a hard throwing guy. Either
Yeah.
that or transfer portal. Once his role kind of diminished a bit, I believe it was like 3 straight series where he just didn't pitch, and nobody knew what if he was injured or not. And then all of a sudden, he's starting the SEC tournament game. So
Yeah.
as soon as he kind of fell out of the rotation and Trey Poozer came in, which that guy, my God, like what a season for him and that decision that was made. But yeah, Nolan McCarthy losing him stinks a little bit, more than a little bit, because I think he would have been there of the returning guys, their offensive focus next season, and really
Yeah.
leaves a hole in the outfield. But for the biggest gains, like I said, Strong and Verdugo are the 2 guys that you'd really love to see in Lexington next season. But I mean, if they get drafted and it's not, I mean, they've got to go. And best of luck to them. I'm glad they respect UK, but I expect in the next week or so, I mean, we're going to start seeing some incoming names for UK because they've only got 2 Power 5 transfers now, and like I said, we've got 7 lineup spots to replenish, and then the starting roles to replenish. I mean, we're going to see a brand new team next year, pretty much just bare bones foundation.
Yeah, and I think that might be the only thing that might threaten what Kentucky has going. It's just going to be so much, and you're going to rely so much on guys who are not in house, and it's just going to you just never know what you're going to get. If you have a freshman on campus who you've watched their bullpens, you've watched them swing, you kind of know what you're getting. With these transfer guys, there's only so much film you can watch. There eventually it comes down to what you can see with your own eyes. And pulling a lot of these guys from non-Power 5 schools, you never know how they're going to translate to the SEC. It's just so hard to tell. And I mean, just kind of I think that's going to be the hardest part. And that might even be why Kentucky might start even lower in some of the rankings. I doubt they'll start unranked like they did this year just because of the season that they had. But I think they're going to start a lot lower than some people may guess just because you just don't know. I mean, it's going to be hard to tell. You didn't know much about this team until all of a sudden rip off 15-1 in the SEC. Then you're like, okay, no, these guys are here. They're legit. So, but just with so much to replace, it's going to be interesting to see. And I think that the odd part about not getting a lot of Power 5 guys yet is you would expect with how much the culture is talked about and how much, the run to Omaha is talked about, how you might expect to see a little bit more of those. It's kind of odd how there's not been a whole lot of that yet. So it's a little bit worrisome, but there's still plenty of names out there and plenty of time. So, I mean, this can definitely get turned around, I think, but it's interesting to see how maybe there's not as much interest being drawn from Kentucky that we might have expected after how much, culture and things like that were mentioned. It's kind of strange to see there's not much interest from, higher value names in the portal.
Yeah, and just what that means is they're going to have to keep pulling out hidden gems, which they did last year. Nick Lopez thought he was going to be just a plug-and-play guy, maybe a backup, and he ends up making first-team All-SEC. And Ryan Walshman 2 years ago comes in from Charleston Southern and was just all right, and then towards ACL, and we're like, okay, we don't know what to expect with him, and now he's probably going to be a first-round MLB draft pick. Then Ryan Nicholson last year, we were like, this might kind of be a miss. Early at the season, we were worried, and then all of a sudden he rips off and ties the most home runs hit in a season. Just crazy stuff. So if I were to trust anyone to find hidden gems, it's the staff and Coach Mingio. But I wanted to touch on the guys who will be, I'm not going to go and say will be back. I'll say expected back, because the only confirmation I've seen of people that will be back is Evan Byers. I know he posted that on Instagram last week, but this is our quick expected to return graphic. Just some names maybe that you don't know that you'll get used to next year. I know Griffin Cameron was the opening day starting center fielder, and after that didn't really play much. But you will get a few veterans back, which will be good with a younger team. And Evan Byers, Pat Herrera, Robert Hogan, James McCoy will be a junior. Jackson Novi will be a senior. But you've got some intriguing young talent as well. Eli Small is a guy who I'm huge on. Caius Gargett is a guy I'm huge on. Ben Cleaver is a guy who, man, like I think he is going to be so good in Lexington. But man, I mean, we're really losing some firepower. I'll let Jonathan talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, to say the least, and this was kind of expected. I mean, you're looking at your shortstop who's just a wizard with the glove, and Grant Smith, didn't have a great season at the plate. A lot of it was injury filled, so it's hard to kind of tell what if that might have been, skill struggle or just struggling with injuries. I mean, on this kind of stage, you look at one of your rocks in the bullpen, and Cam O'Brien, who was just in every single big role, took the ball every single time. Um, Johnny Hummel, your closer for basically the entire season. Mitchell Daly, I mean, needs no some of these guys need no introduction. I mean, Ryan Nicholson, Dominic Nyman. I mean, Trey Poozer, you could argue he may be the biggest loss. I mean, there's so many guys on here you can make a case. Lopez for who's the biggest loss. And I mean, even a guy like Ruben Church, he certainly had some chances and didn't look god awful. But it's just kind of how it is with having an older team that it can get you to the dance in Omaha, but you got to be able to continue to replenish, and we'll see if they're going to be able to do that, because there's certainly some massive shoes to fill for this team, no doubt.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to touch on Eli Small, because I think he is going to be really good. I know Derek Terry, our friend Derek Terry, talked about it. I know he put out a tweet or so, maybe a week or so ago, but I agree that I would be shocked if Eli Small is not in that starting lineup next season. And whether he's catching, which I don't think he'll be catching, if especially if Burks is back, which we still don't know about, Palacier and our other guy, but. Yeah, I think Eli Small, and I think he'll be in right field. I think that's where he'll play. Did some time there. Had some big moments this year. That pinch hit against Florida. Then I believe he homered in his first game, or was that opening series. So really excited to see him back. I'd like to see James McCoy take a leap, because I mean this will be the third season of James McCoy, and it's like he'll have a stretch of games where he looks awesome, like plays out of his mind, like. I believe the regional, he looked like that. Like he had a few, but before that, I mean, it's like 6 or 7 games where he doesn't get a hit, and you're like, man, like I don't know. But Ben Cleaver also, I'll be really excited to see what they do with him, whether they do let him start this year or if he's one of their biggest guys out of the pen. Same with Robert Hogan, who was lights out towards the end of the season. Evan Byers is really good, and then Jackson Novi, who kind of like James McCoy, like he either looks hot or he looks cold. Just your thoughts on who you think will be big coming back next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it with Small. I mean, I think you're looking at a guy like Pat Herrera too. I mean, we kind of slept on him in that list. I mean, he shined in the little moments that he had. So it's not all going to need to be from transfers, or you do have some in-house pieces who can have a lot of value. I think that with so much uncertainty with the pitching staff, Hogan is probably my biggest name coming back. I mean, you're looking at your closer right there, and he was right there with Hummel in just about every single statistic, maybe even better in a few. They kind of were back and forth. So I mean, you're replenishing the closer role with just another great arm. So I think that's huge. And then looking at starters, if they keep Cleaver as a starter, I mean, if he can stay healthy, I mean, my goodness, because we even seen him even in some big stages against SEC teams. It's not even like he was going up against midweek teams and doing what he was doing. I mean, he was right into the fire in some of the biggest spots, and he shined. So I think pitcher for sure, Hogan and Cleaver, and then probably Small and Herrera are the names I'm going to really look out for to play a big role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen some chatter online about. I know I had Emilian Petrie in my expected to turn pro roster tracker on KentuckySportsRadio.com, and maybe there was some confusion behind that. I'm fairly certain that Petrie will get drafted top 150, and in some spots he's top 75. I've seen him at 78 before, and I think he fell a little bit back to early 90s. But I think that's a guy like he is going to be such a good pro. And I mean, there's a reason that Min spent the whole last month of the regular season saying that he believed that Emilian Petrie and Ryan Walshman are the 2 best players he's ever coached. Like he is going to be very good. Ryan Walshman's going to be very good. And I haven't seen Mason Moore projected anywhere, but I know you just hear things around the press box. And I mean, the whole last month of the season, it was always Mason won't be back and Travis Smith won't be back. And Mason's got pro stuff. Like, I truly believe if a team takes a chance on him, he can be really good. Like, we've seen Logan Martin be drafted. We've seen Austin Strickland be drafted. I think Mason Moore is more talented than those guys.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that would keep Mamo is maybe if he just goes a little little higher in the draft or lower in the draft than he thought. Maybe he just falls back to the really, really late rounds and thinks he can do better for himself. I mean, it would be a huge get back. I mean, you're looking at an ace right there. I mean, if for whatever reason, I mean, any of these guys, even Petrie, I mean, Waldy for sure is gone. I mean, no doubt. You're talking a first round pick. But I mean, if either one of these guys, slide back in the draft and then decide that it might be better for their stock and just for their career if they stayed here another year in the SEC, I mean, either one of those guys would be massive get backs, but I would not rely on either one of them just because, just like you said, I mean, these guys are going to get drafted. That was the talk all around, was like, because even we were kind of like, well, it'd be nice when Mason comes back and all that. And then that was kind of just like, no, that's not really how it's going to work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, those guys getting drafted, those will be, again, just big shoes to fill. But I mean, that's kind of nothing new with the way this team has been formatted over the past 2 seasons.
Yeah. Just so much information is just coming in and going out of this program right now. It's like, you can't really ever take a day to just stop and kind of chill. Like Monday, and then yesterday, my birthday, Nolan McCarthy enters the portal, and then UK gets a big recruit, and it's like every single day something is happening, and it's just a complete contrast to last offseason and off seasons before that. It's things are happening, people are caring. Kentucky is taking baseball seriously to get back to Omaha. The recruits are buying in, the transfers are buying in. So really an exciting time. I know we've just hit the 32-minute mark. Don't want to stay out here too long, just kind of talking because things are going to happen, obviously. Something might happen in the next 5 minutes or so as soon as we get off of here. But I'd like to get back out here next week and kind of go at it then, or maybe after the MLB draft, just kind of figure out where things shake out. Waldy, Petrie, Moore, Devin Burks still hasn't really officially announced. I know on social media, his mother put out a graphic, which was from last year, that he'd be returning, but I've heard things that he wasn't returning. And then UK goes out and gets Palacier from Kansas State, and then a big time high school recruit. And so not really sure what's going on with him. Hopefully we'll get some confirmation in the next week or so, but we'll go ahead and get out of here. Jonathan, still have not changed the Twitter. I mean, I guess it's just never going to change at this point, is it?
I'm trying. I'm still trying. Twitter will not let me. Hopefully, I'm going to look into it a little hard and maybe try to get with a rep or something, get on a phone call with customer service or something here to try to get that changed. But for now, it's still JB239965.
Yeah, you all can find me on Twitter or X at Daniel Hager KSR. Trying to keep things fresh this summer, doing some transfer portal spotlights. Just put up another one with Ethan Walker from Longwood. Talked to him and Hunter Gillum, Cap Gillum, both guys from Longwood. Hunter talked about their relationship from Longwood and growing up just 2 hours apart from each other. Really cool to see their connection. And then Oliver Boone from Cal, which it cracked me up that I asked him if he knew anything about Kentucky. Like, you can just say KFC, Kentucky Derby, and he was like, nothing. Like, I guess the thought of Kentucky had never even crossed his mind until he saw UK play in the NCAA tournament. So just exciting times. Hopefully UK can get some good guys in the next few days. Maybe, like you said, like a Cusino and Mingione, kind of doing some damage control, getting back out there. The loss of Amorati sucks, but if there's anyone I trust to get some hidden gems, it's Coach Mingione and the crew. Yep. Me and Jonathan will be back here next week for another episode of the Batcat Beat. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. We'll see you all next time.